The English language is really weird. I've seen it referred to before as 8 different languages hiding in a trench coat, because over the years, English has basically taken from so many different languages, spellings, pronunciations, etymologies. It's honestly fascinating, but it also depends on how to pronounce words based on where you're from. Different parts of English-speaking countries have completely different pronunciations, so there isn't really a correct way of pronouncing something. That being said, my name is Edinger, and over the last couple months, I've made some interesting videos on words that I say and or don't say after living in the UK for over 10 years, and you guys had a lot to say about it. One that never came up, which I think is a really good example before we dive in, is Primark, just found this out recently, literally today, Irish brand? Wow. If you're in mainland UK, as in England, Scotland, Wales, you're primarily going to be pronouncing it Primark. However, if you're from Northern Ireland, it's pronounced Primark. And if you're from the Republic of Ireland, you call it pennies, where it's actually based. They couldn't call it pennies in the UK because, well, pennies, if you're an American, you already know what I'm gonna say, is already owned as a trademark by JCPenney's, the massive American retailer. So pennies in Ireland, Primark in Northern Ireland, and Primark everywhere else. Will you be bullied for saying Primark in Northern Ireland? Probably, because you sound like a bloody Englishman, but otherwise, it doesn't really matter. So by far, the comment I received the most on my video about the words I do use every day after living here for 10 years was about paracetamol. We have paracetamol. You're saying it wrong, just so you know, it's supposed to be pronounced paracetamol. You say paracetamol wrong. The way you pronounce paracetamol is giving me a headache. I will appreciate the humor in that one, but no, I'm not pronouncing it wrong. Despite the sheer amount of British people telling me so, if you are from the North, then yes, I believe you might be pronouncing this paracetamol. Also, if you're from anywhere else that's not the South, so if you're from the Midlands, sure, there's your representation. The comment that annoyed me about this one was, you say paracetamol in an American way. No, I don't, because Americans don't use the word paracetamol. That was the first thing I talked about in the video. We say acetaminophen. Anyway, paracetamol is the way that I pronounce it. My girlfriend pronounces it, her whole family, my friend Luke pronounces it that way, my friend Phoenix. Pretty much everyone I know that grew up in the South pronounces it paracetamol, or one that I also use sometimes, and I just heard recently in a pharmacy in Amsterdam this week where I just was, the doctor said he could prescribe me paracetamol. Now, I've heard paracetamol a lot, and in fact, that's what I thought it was at first, because whenever I had a headache in the UK, Tylenol doesn't make sense here. That's not a brand over here as much, and nobody knows what I'm talking about. So I say what other people say, which is either paracetamol or paracetamol. Paracetamol, if you look in the dictionary, is actually the correct way of pronouncing the word. But language changes over time, and it seems like people in the South and myself say paracetamol. Not right, not wrong, just different. A little colorful, makes the language a bit more interesting and difficult if you're trying to learn it. And speaking about trying to learn English, that sounded like a segue to an advert voice. It was not. This video is not sponsored. I'm filming it the day before I'm uploading. A lot of people that watch my videos do not speak English as their first language, which means supposedly I'm a really difficult person to listen to because every once in a while I really like speak fast. It's just the way that I've spoken. Literally, if you go back 10 years, 12 years, 13 years on this YouTube channel, I just have a really fast way of speaking. I find it boring to watch videos in which people speak super slowly. I have to speed them up to 2 times, and if YouTube would only implement it 3 times, I would finally be happy. Over the last 2 months, I've received so many comments, I decided to talk about it. For instance, we have, you speak so fast, it's unnatural. Good reviews, but he speaks a wee bit too fast. Hate the third person, I'm right here. I don't have anyone else work on my team, it's just me. Oh, it's too fast speak for me, I'm Russian and I have A1. Great information, slow down. Does this footage seem slightly sped up? Why is bro sped up? Like I said, these are fine, but I had someone accusing me of speeding up the video. Why would I speed up a video? If anything, I should slow it down to increase the watch time algorithmically, am I right? But I find those really boring, and I edit my videos very tightly, and I have JL edits so that the audio flows. And listen, that's just the way I speak and the way that I edit. But if you are someone that's learning English and you're hoping to learn a little bit more English by watching some of my videos, well, something like that, in which I speak at quite a quick pace, you can actually slow down using the YouTube UI. There's a button there. Usually I go to 2 times speed. You can go to 0.75. I don't recommend it for most people. In fact, I would say speed me up if you can, but I just wanted to throw that out there. I'm not going to speak slower because then that's going to make me bored of my own videos. I assume most English speakers with huge proficiency also bored. And so there you go. Just slow me down if you need to, but otherwise, I'm gonna keep being myself. I don't leave comments at your work telling you to change your work, okay? Please, thank you. I used to get such pride out of how fast I could get through an intro when I used to do my Ask Evan series, which was, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Evan Edinger. Today's another episode of Ask Evan, the only series on YouTube where you ask legitimate questions and I answer with illegitimate puns. I don't know what C tier of English that would be, but it's fast. You know, I could speak fast like that if I wanted to every time. but I consider you. Okay, I do slow down a bit of my power. So to answer your question, can you talk slower? I won't. I can, but I won't. And the last most commented thing had to do with beef mince. You guys had so many different comments. Everyone got their knickers in a twist because I say beef mince when all of you want to say minced beef, which, to be fair, I think that's traditionally what it's meant to be called, but you know, as English evolves and such, maybe if you go down to your local grocer, you might look in the meat aisle and find it right there saying beef mince, which is what I call it. So you can't say no one calls it that when my man Mr. Morrison and my man Mr. Sainsbury also call it that, okay? I'm with good company. Pun intended. Oh, the video I did with my mom, I did mention that hissing I used to mean when it's light rain versus chucking it down. That's a lot more. I had quite a few people saying, well, pissing always meant raining heavily to me. And for some reason, when I hear the word pissing, I think for some reason my brain thinks about the German words for rain. And I'm thinking of that like piss rain, like really light, like that misty London rain where it can't just commit. It's just that annoying bit where it's not strong enough to put an umbrella out, but it's just enough to annoy you. That to me is when it's pissing. However, if it's pissing it down, you've just leveled up the rain, and now it is basically the same as chucking it down. Pissing it down, chucking it down, much more than just pissing. Tell me if anyone else is on the same wavelength with me, or if I'm completely out of my depth here with words. Now, in terms of the video I did on driving words, you know what? I do have to admit, I made an entire video after that, specifically on roundabouts and such in New Jersey and the US, as a way to be like, I messed up a little bit because, yeah, South Jersey, this very tiny little part, half of the state that's not a big state in the US, has annoyingly specifically niche vernacular with a lot of different words, and some of them it's so exciting to find out. And so when I make a video whose original title is something along the lines of similar videos I've already uploaded about like words I refuse to say, like the American words that I've kept, so I would have said circle, I then tried a different type of titling thing to generate more interest, and it worked. Except the titling scheme was less personal based and more objective based. And so I need to watch that going forward, because as much as I was like, sweet, this video did really well, if I'm saying Americans don't necessarily say roundabout, you know, I really need to make sure I'm double checking on that. So I made an entire video to be like, all of the entirety of like west of the East Coast in America say roundabout, some parts say rotary, some parts say traffic circle. So that's basically what that was. So yeah, my bad. Apologies. However, we did have some really interesting context here brought up by Phil. So we've got, regarding lollipop person, I think, Evan, that you are missing the historical perspective on this. Probably also true for anyone under the age of 50. You must remember that the vast majority of urban children in the 50s and 60s UK walked to school on their own. So it was really important that they only crossed the road by the wardens. I think they were advertising for the job. Local authorities used the term crossing warden. So the name was used to make the warden more friendly to children, which children wouldn't remember instructions about a lollipop lady, even if they didn't hand out confectionery. Yes, I suppose that makes sense. Call them something fanciful about lollipops, and so the children will actually remember. I think that's quite cute. It makes sense. Where I'm from, I was actually taught, instead of looking for an area that I'm allowed to cross where a crossing warden would be, I was just told, don't you dare go near Delsey Drive or you will die. Because most roads in the US are really not pedestrian friendly. Most all of them, especially where I grew up in the burbs. Now we have quite a few Australian comments where they're almost a combination of English and American words, similar to Canada a lot of the times. And so we have, in Australia, instead of sidewalk/pavement, we say footpath, and frankly, I think we've nailed that. So I do agree, footpath is a great word. It is used quite a lot in the UK as well, though I don't really hear it much when referred to paved footpath. Usually if you're walking alongside the Thames, that's going to be called a footpath, usually if it's dirt and such. But as soon as you start talking about paved bits, then it's called a pavement over here. But you'd be understood, that'd be fair. Another Australian comment we got here is, I was showing my American friends around here in Australia, and I used the phrase heaps of parks down there while telling the stranger where they could park. My friends were baffled, and years later they still say it was just me being silly. Also, it's a footpath, doubling the footpath there. But then someone said I mentioned to my American friend I was going to chuck a Yui. It was a fun conversation. Listen, I love chuck a Yui. I throw that expression in all the time. I learned it in a video I uploaded like 8 years ago about Australian slang. And yeah, I think Yui, as opposed to U-turn, sounds so much better. And that was one that I genuinely use when I'm driving with friends and such. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna pop a Yui, I usually say. I don't chuck the Yui, I just pop a Yui. But That's what I love about language. You can take little bits from different languages that you like, and sure, you may not be inherently understood, but I think that's so fascinating and exciting that you can make your own little vocab book that makes you you, even if you are just a little bit extra Aussie. Oh no. Here to say mic 2 is better, thank you. I'm actually using mic 1 right now. Mic 1 sounds way better when I'm in this position because I've got a big sound panel, got some things hiding on to mute the reflections, whereas in that corner where I was sitting for the previous video, mic 2, which is an SM7B, does much better at removing those reflections. I was a bit scared to use an SM7B, like boomed out of shot, because that's usually an up close and personal podcast mic, but I agree. It just sounded really nice over there, as opposed to the 416 I have, which really needs to be a well-treated room for that to sound good. So hopefully right now, not too shabby. The plate on the car in the UK is originally called a registration plate, although many do say number plate. I got this comment quite a bit as well, especially someone saying reg plate. I like reg plate. Sounds nice. Sounds like a plate full of vegetables. I had to confirm this comment with my girlfriend because it still confuses me, as I've never once heard someone say this, but I believe you. And that is also the middle of the freeway, motorway. Thanks for that. In the UK is called a central reservation, as opposed to the median in the States. Yeah, in the States it's called a median or an island, but central reservation? What? You guys out here 6 friggin' syllables to say median or island, 2 syllables. I think that's interesting. I will not say, oh no, a car is up on the central reservation, because by that point I would have run into it because I was also on the central reservation. Maybe the term just wouldn't really work in the US because that would be more assuming you're talking about Native American land or something. Now we have a comment here from Boris that says, Evan, the small painted roundabouts used to be known as whirligigs in the 70s, but upon some initial cursory research, I could not find a single web page backing up this claim. So if there are any older Brits in my comment section that want to chime in right now and be like, absolutely, please say. I couldn't find if there was any area of the UK that ever used this in the past. Maybe Google's just not updated, but hey, this could be lost to the sands of time if you don't speak now or forever hold your peace. And then satisfyingly, I finally have an answer as to why I was so surprised that Brits are always obsessed with the emergency brake in this country, and it has not really as much to do with culture as much as it has to do with manual cars versus automatics. Automatics, according to this comment, and I did actually do some extra research, do not need it because that's what the P is for. It parks the car, it brakes it. So you don't really need the emergency brake for much else. If you're in a manual car and you do not put up that brake, your car will go away. I actually didn't know that. So essentially when you park or stop your car in a manual car, you're essentially putting it into neutral. Is that correct? So wait, it's gear 1 to 5 and then neutral. Yeah. And reverse. Yeah. And no park. There's no park? In a standard manual car in the UK, whatever that means, Heather's car was probably built before she was. There is no park as a gear. So now that makes sense. So you were essentially putting it into P by putting up that handbrake. I've learned so much. Thank you for these lovely comments. Besides just these comments, I did just want to say a big thank you to all of you for being so engaged with my YouTube channel recently. My channel's been doing really well for the last 2 months, and I have been grinding quite heavily. Therefore, my second channel has basically been dormant because I've just been really putting a lot of time into this one and trying to make sure everything is good. And so just wanted to say big thank you. I just came back from Amsterdam this last week, and I'm so excited to edit that footage when I finish editing the other 5 videos that are delayed on my second channel, including my printing stuff, my stuff with my mom. Basically, I'm still just one guy trying his best, and I do make mistakes, so I do appreciate when your comments are politely saying that. So thank you again for being a very valued member of this community, whatever this community is. It's hard for me to describe what I do on this channel. When I went to the museum the other day in Amsterdam and a guy was like, oh, you make YouTube videos, what are they about? Usually I have no idea what to say. I say, interesting UK-US differences sometimes. I took a test once, it did really well. I don't know. This time I just went, the other day I made a video about how some roundabouts in the US are absolutely crazy compared to how safe they are in the UK. And this started us off on a 10-minute conversation, and I was late to see some Van Gogh paintings. But either way, I was like, I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the stuff I'm making. So yeah, good. Anyway, hope you are too, and I hope to see you back on my channel next Sunday. Why is it so hot today? I want to die. Last week I said I wish it was hot, and now I want to cry. That's legit.